Welcome to The Reload with your host, LandO Sanders.
Welcome to The Reload here on Prediction, the esports video talk show network. You can learn more about what's next in the worlds of Call of Duty, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and others every week, of course, here on Twitch. And if you happen to miss any of these shows, no worries. You can obviously check us out on our YouTube channel on demand. And another show that we actually have going on right now in combination with Reload, we actually have a show called Hard Reads. They're going to be having their second episode with TK Breezy and Austin. That's going down tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, as well as 3 p.m. Pacific, like I said, right here on your go-to network for esports analysis content. So today I want to try and talk a lot about franchising, right? It's important. It's a big subject that's going on. I feel like there's been a lot of content as of recently that's been more displayed in terms of kind of little key factors in terms of what franchising really is going to mean for next year. So there's been a lot of comments. There's been a lot of controversy kind of around the entire subject. And I was actually thinking about this while I was kind of preparing this morning. And one big thing that I feel like a lot of people are starting to learn, even in the midst of a lot of, kind of growing pains, right? We talked about the Optic Gaming situation, even in terms of just the CWL, a lot of people are starting to realize the average fan is starting to get more a hold of what franchising is. And granted, it's been a lot of negative situations, you could argue, for a lot, but it is kind of helping everyone out in the long run. And we actually did get a comment the other day, actually through a podcast called No Jumper. Banks, one of the owners of FaZe Clan, went on this popular podcast, and he kind of listed out a few things about FaZe Clan, how they are a lifestyle brand. He kind of complained about how esports and how laid back, or rather kind of laid out why franchising isn't a good idea in his opinion and why it's not going to work out. He went even as far as to say is, screw esports, we want to be involved with the lifestyle stuff. So this kind of shocked me a little bit to a point whenever I was watching this podcast. And shout out, by the way, to No Jumper, fantastic podcast. You guys should watch it if you don't already, with Adam22. But whenever he was kind of making these comments, it kind of opened my eyes a little bit. And obviously, FaZe Banks, very well known member of FaZe Clan. He's obviously one of the main owners of it as well. But he kind of made it clear that one of the biggest franchises, or no, I shouldn't say franchises, one of the biggest organizations in Call of Duty esports right now is kind of thinking and having the same thought process in terms of maybe esports is no longer the main focus for them. Maybe esports is no longer the main focus for a brand like FaZe. At least one of the owners seems to think so. And like I said, one of the main comments was how inconsistent games are. And he actually brings up a really good point, right? Because we think about games in comparison to sports. How long has basketball been around? How long has baseball been around? How long has football? All of these things, how long have they been around? And then we think about video games. What is the longest lasting mainstream game that has been out there that is consistently played and on YouTube and all those things? Like you could throw out a few. I know Fortnite has only been around for so many years. It might even be Call of Duty. There's other games that are out there. You talk about StarCraft, maybe even Minecraft, right? There's a lot of little things. But how long have they been at the top consistently as an esport? Because those things are constantly changing. And if you're willing to put up, in terms of franchising, a $25 million, $30 million bid, even up to $40 million for the Overwatch League, if you're willing to put that kind of price tag on a game that maybe is only going to be relevant for 4, 5, 6 years at the most, are you really going to get your return investment? So I liked what he said actually there. Granted, it wasn't the most positive, and it was in relation to Call of Duty, but it was true. Like, right, how inconsistent video games are. They become a trend and then they die out. And that's one of the main reasons why a lot of people, including Banks, thinks that franchising isn't really going to pan out or really work out to the way that everyone else may think so. Now, the big question that I've been seeing on Reddit, on Twitter, a lot of people are saying, does Banks' comments mean that FaZe won't be in franchising next year for the CDL? Because that seems to be the rumor name. A lot of people are saying, oh my gosh, it's the CDL. Optic Gaming tweeted out. It's been a rumor for a long time. That's what I've heard. CDL, Call of Duty League. That's, it seems to be what the average name is kind of going around. It seems to kind of be, it seems to be that since everyone is kind of using the same name, that we can kind of use that as a signifier that it probably will be, the name next year. But does Banks' comments mean that FaZe won't be in franchising? And I don't think that it does. I really don't. I don't think that just based off his comments, based off of his thoughts, is the indicator for the rest of how the FaZe organization thinks as of this moment. I mean, you look at FaZe Clan by how aggressive they were to get back in the league, right? They were willing to go and buy Red Reserve spot. How much they wanted to be in Call of Duty was so emphasized at that moment. There was a lot of things when it came down to Accelerate. I was kind of on the back lines of that. I was watching and you had kind of an inside look at whenever that organization was kind of going through a few things. FaZe was constantly bidding, wanting to get involved in the Call of Duty World League. So why would they not want to be involved next year in franchising if just the year before, the one that we're in right now, like why were they so emphasized on wanting to be in this year but not next year? Like if they don't have a long-term plan, why would they just want to be in this year and then just quickly hop out? Maybe it's the prize. Maybe they weren't expecting how much the prize pool would be, but to no avail. I just don't see that really kind of being the overall process. I don't think that's overall the thing that is really kind of deciding what will happen with FaZe, what will not happen with FaZe. So I think they're going to be in next year. I really do. I think they're going to be in a really good spot next year, depending on how things work out. But while one of the owners isn't a fan, that doesn't mean the rest of the organization doesn't have a desire to be involved with it. And obviously, you know, in regards to the Tfue lawsuit, the High Sky situation, their camp as of this moment isn't looking the greatest. But I don't think it's going to affect them as much as people think, right? FaZe has a ton of money in terms of their backing, but do they have enough money to justify this massive, amount of cash to just get involved in the CDL, along with going through the whole process of wanting to, kind of have an infrastructure for the next following years? If one of the, like I said, the main owners has a problem with franchising in itself, they don't have any other franchise esports, right? They're in CS, they're not in League of Legends, they're not in the Overwatch League. Maybe that's an indicator of what they want to focus on, which could be the lifestyle brand. So who knows, right? There's a big question mark on FaZe Clan, who happens to be a massive, massive kind of thing right now going on in terms of or rather, I should say, there is a massive question going on right now in terms of will this brand be in the Call of Duty World League next year? So, like I said, do I strongly believe that FaZe will not be in the league next year? I think they will. I really do. I kind of getting back to that very quickly. I think that they will be in the league next year. I think they have a really good opportunity, and we'll obviously be discussing that more as time goes on. So, in terms of bringing up franchising, right? We did actually get a pretty good idea in terms of locations for next year for the CDL, right? We got to watch yesterday. There was a big announcement in terms of Minnesota and Los Angeles were announced. They are officially in. Those are two confirmed locations for the CDL next year. Minnesota is headed up by Wise Ventures, which also includes Gary V, very well-known entrepreneur, online personality. And like I said, this is kind of headed up, though, by Wise Ventures, who own the Minnesota Vikings. And in terms of Los Angeles, which is the more controversial of the two, that will be headed up by Immortals Gaming Club's own Optic Gaming. Obviously, Immortals, owns Optic, and we'll kind of get into that in a little bit. But they also do own a spot for the Los Angeles Valiant in terms of the Overwatch League. So it was kind of in my mind, this was always going to happen. Like, I had no doubts in my mind that since the Immortals Gaming Club is based in LA, they already have a relationship with Activision Blizzard. They're not going back to Texas, where one of the brands that they just added to their organization is from. That doesn't mean that they want to be there either. So that, for me, kind of solidified things. Now, we did learn a lot, though, from these two locations being announced. First, Minnesota, totally out of left field, right? I had no idea that this was actually going to be a city that was announced. And as someone who kind of considers themselves to be connected to the inside, I was not expecting this. I really was not expecting this whatsoever. So this lets us know that spots are becoming more and more slim and being given to locations that are somewhat surprising, right? If you have a bid, if you're interested, right? I don't think that this, at least from the knowledge that we've gained up to this point, Minnesota Wise Ventures, they have no ties to esports whatsoever, at least in my history. Chat, you can feel free to keep me updated with that one, or even tweet at us. I am curious, but I don't believe that they have any previous ties to esports. So if this company is willing to kind of come out there, make themselves known, that may also be an indicator that there aren't too many Overwatch League teams who are already, chomping at the bit to want to be in Call of Duty next season. So like I said, if there was this one brand who decided to kind of throw themselves out there, why would they announce this one, right? Why was this one the first one on the kind of the next one in line, when all of the brands up to this point were based in the Overwatch League? You announce another one that obviously has to do with the Overwatch League. It is kind of interesting in the situation. So along with that, I've been kind of on the inside hearing a few things in terms of the rumored amount of spots that will be in Call of Duty League next year. Now, I've heard 12. That has been the rumor that I have personally heard. I know there's kind of talks among 16, even up to 18, which I think is honestly very unrealistic. Overwatch League started off with this. I think that 12 kind of makes sense based off what I've heard. And this is, like I said, what I have heard is going to be official, which means that after we've learned from Minnesota, Los Angeles, and the previous cities that have been announced, there are only 5 more spots left. And I want to try to weigh out a few more, because I think that there are not 5 spots left. I, in fact, think that there are only 3 spots left. Now, the 2 cities that I think, or the 2 organizations that I think are going to make these up, first of all is Luminosity, right? Luminosity, as part of the Vancouver Titans that are already in the Overwatch League, which means they have a relationship with Activision Blizzard, who also, like I said, are LG. For those who are already involved with Call of Duty, they clearly know that. They're already involved in the CWL. They're a part of the Vancouver Titans in the Overwatch League, which own the Vancouver, Canada spot. That to me seems like a match made in heaven. Luminosity has shown no interest to want to get out of Call of Duty. They're not in the greatest roster situation, but you saw them, kind of buy out Bracken Skies. They clearly aren't done with COD, and the fact that they already have a relationship with Activision Blizzard, for me, makes it very prevalent that they will probably be in next year. So that overall spot limit that I was talking about in terms of 5 spots being left, there's 4. Next one we have Genji, right? They're previously, even before they got involved with Call of Duty, they were in the Overwatch League known as the Seoul Dynasty, backed by some of the biggest names in the esports world, SK Telecom, etc. All those brands are kind of back behind them. I think that they also take a spot as well. Why would they dive into the CWL without having an idea in the future of wanting to be in franchising? They already have a league team. They're sitting pretty well when it comes down to the overall standings. Like I said, granted, they've made some interesting roster changes, but they're making roster changes. There are some brands that are in the Call of Duty World League right now who are making very odd changes. They're not really doing everything the way they're supposed to. It's kind of surprising a lot of people. Those, for me, are the brands that know they're done. They know they don't have a chance, so why are we going to spend any excess money? Why are we going to try to pay this guy, $5,000 a month when we can go and settle for $3,000 a month and kind of just hang out? Because we know the only thing that we have to benefit next year is by just selling these players' contracts off. So I think for me, Luminosity, Genji, those are solidified in my mind. Like, I have no doubts that I think 2 of them will be in the league next year, which, like I said, means that those 5 spots are now trimmed down to 3. I think we see Vancouver with Luminosity. I think we see some location with Genji. I know in the Overwatch League, they're in the Seoul, Korea spot. Will that happen for the Call of Duty World League, or rather for the CDL? I don't know. They maybe they'll take a European spot. Maybe they'll head over to Cali, which I know is where they're also based. So, like I said, I think there are only 3 more spots, and one of those spots, and I've heard from sources as well. I've been told there's some noise around Chicago. I've heard there's some noise around the Chicago, Illinois spot. Teams like Midnight, Evil Geniuses, and maybe even 100 Thieves, depending on how another California spot prices out. And even if it's available in terms of wanting to be in Los Angeles, because it obviously is more preferred over San Fran in terms of regular sports, in terms of how even the Overwatch League works, 100 team may look at Chicago. And that's what I've heard, is that they are interested in wanting to look at the location if they want to be involved next year. And if they do, they'll be in the running versus Midnight and maybe even Evil Geniuses, which is what I have been told in previous. So in terms of another household name in Call of Duty esports, you also have to look at maybe United. At least from my information that I have heard about the United squad, is that they don't have as much of a backing as the 100 Thieves out there, the FaZe clans out there, the ones who are kind of competing against them, even at the biggest brands in the world. I don't know if they have that same financial backing that a lot of other organizations do. So I think United will have to join a location that is already in the CDL for next year, in for franchising next year. I don't think they can afford one on their own. So you're looking at places like Atlanta, Minnesota, New York, Paris, etc., a location without a previous organization backing. So we talk about all these names. We talk about 100 Thieves. We talked about United. Now we have to talk about FaZe, right? I talked about them a little bit earlier. I know I was mentioning that we'd come back to them eventually. Like I said, and then you have FaZe, who clearly from certain owners don't want to throw all of their money in the world at this. They have locations to choose from, however, outside of LA, if that's one that you're not really interested in. Because like I said, Banks clearly is not on the franchise train, at least as of yet. They probably are trying to be careful with their money. And you got to imagine, like I said, the Tfue lawsuit, the issues with High Sky, all those things, lawyers, all that stuff kind of rounding in together. You could argue their finances are not in the best place that they've ever been at this very moment. So all of Florida could be an option for FaZe Clan or any of these organizations. All of Florida's up there. However, this isn't where FaZe Clan is based. You can move up the East Coast to Boston. You could go to Philly. You could go south to Texas. Or if you're not interested in the LA spot, you head north to San Fran, right? You can go to San Francisco. There are still some very major cities that are out there. And while there are location spots, or rather, while these are starting to thin out, you never know who could grab these. Right? We're talking about the last 3 spots, at least in my mind, are still out there. We have United, we have FaZe, and we have 100T. Will those be the three that round it out? I don't think so. I think someone else is going to come in, and that could be a TSM, a CLG, a Cloud9, who may just slide in and grab another one of those positions. But just to recap, for those who may not be super aware, and for those who have any questions, feel free to let us know in chat, obviously. But just to recap, there are a few confirmed locations that will 100% be in the CDL, which are Toronto, Canada, which is Splice. We have New York, who has no previous organization, along with Atlanta, Georgia. We have Dallas, Texas, which of course is going to be Envy. Paris, France has no previous organization. Minnesota has no previous organization. And then there is Los Angeles, California, which is now Optic Gaming / Immortals. So that kind of brings us into our next subject, right? Immortals' unique opportunity. For those who don't know or maybe don't understand, Immortals is the current parent company to Optic Gaming. So the way that they own Optic, for those who maybe aren't as fresh up to date when it comes down to Call of Duty or how it works with the organization by it, even coming from Gears of War, CS:GO, I know they have a lot of different teams out there. The way they own Optic Gaming is because they purchased Infinite Esports. Infinite Esports used to be the parent company to Optic. However, they went downhill, made some horrible decisions, and managed to make the biggest fan base organization in the world go in the red. So I want to quickly touch on why this would be a huge opportunity for Immortals now that they own the Optic Gaming brand and now that they are in the CDL and are in the Los Angeles spot, which definitely came with a pretty big price tag. Now, the CDL, from my interpretation, is going to work very similar to the Overwatch League. Same owners, same company, etc. From what I have heard, and this was a direct comment that I have heard, and this is something that I've heard from the inside. I don't really know too many more details upon this. This is what I've heard as a direct comment from someone that is involved with the league next year. Activision knows how important the OG brand is. That's what I've heard. Activision knows how important the Optic Gaming brand is. And I can't go into further detail on that because I personally don't know more than that. However, that's something that I have heard from the inside. And when I heard that, I was told that I was pretty much told nothing else besides that. So that's what I'm trying to get to. But what I interpret is, what if the Optic name could still exist in the CDL? Now, logistically, in terms of legal, I'm not a specialist in that field, clearly. However, if that name isn't used in any other esport, because CS:GO is being sold, we learned that the greatest console team in esports history, the Optic Gears of War team, has been released as of yesterday, which I could get into that for a very long time. 17 out of 19 championships, one of the most, if not the most dominant run in all of esports history. Incredible, but they decided to release it. We'll get to that another time. Once Black Ops 4 ends, no team, no esport will be using the Optic Gaming branding. Immortals bought the name, the prestigious name that comes with the title of Optic. What if, since the name is no longer used in other esports, if Immortals could get away with being called the LA Optic in the CDL? Now, it's far off. I understand that. Right? I totally get that it is somewhat far off. We don't know if this is possible or not. However, thinking of it from that angle, would be huge, right? If they could accomplish that, being in LA, having the city name and having the player name or the team name of Optic would instantly give them the prestige as the organization in the CDL. The New York Yankee pinstripes, the Laker purple and gold. The LA Optic would have instantly a similar prestige to those sports and their respective fields. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be the exact same. They're not instantly going to go up to the same levels of the way the Yankees and the Lakers are perceived. But in terms of just the way that those brands have affected their sports, I think that LA Optic would affect that in the same way. Now, this is a perfect situation if you're Immortals. And like I said, I haven't heard a confirmation if that is 100% going to be their goal, but I think it could be a possibility. Like I said, I have heard that in terms of the way that the CDL works, the way that they have kind of emphasized the interest in the name Optic, and like we said, Activision Blizzard, they're not dumb. They're not dumb to what has kind of made their game a ton of money. No one is dumb in terms of all of the hype that comes around the Optic Gaming name. Just the term Optic is instantly a moneymaker, right? In terms of matches, whenever they're scheduled, even back to the old days, in terms of when Optic would play, it's all based around them, right? They have a large audience. It's no secret that whenever you're at an event and whenever Optic Gaming plays, the viewership goes up. If they're not in the grand final, everyone already starts tweeting out. Oh, there's tons of Reddit threads, everything going around and saying, hey, we're starting to go down a little bit, right? The viewership is starting to waver a little bit. They are one of the biggest, if not the biggest, esports fan base in the entire world. And if you are the CDL, who is at this moment in a very shaky situation with your franchise, obviously you have a lot of major partners out there, even FaZe Clan, owners are even tweeting out and talking and saying, hey, we're not too sure how confident we are in this. Maybe this could give you some stability, right? That maybe this could give you a chance to hold on to some of that viewership, to hold on to more of that fan base, because you're losing the name 100 Thieves. You're losing the name FaZe. What if you could at least keep the crown jewel? What if you could just keep the one that emphasizes it the most in terms of the name Optic Gaming? I think it'd be interesting. I would love to see that if it were possible. But like we said, next year, we're not having Optic in it unless they can work out the situation, which, like I said, no one else is going to have the Optic Gaming name. You just paid $100 million to pay off some debt. You also got the Overwatch League spot, which you're selling. You pretty much just got the League of Legends, position. Is it really worth, I don't even know at this point, what, $60 million? It could be, right? But you also have the Optic Gaming name. What are they going to do with it now? What are you going to kind of do with it now that everything is kind of ended? Are you going to go back into Gears? Obviously not. Are you going to go back into Call of Duty? Well, you can't, because now it's involved with franchising as well. And like I said, I think at this moment, I've compared it a few times in prior shows and prior segments and whatnot. You guys have probably heard me talk about how I describe Call of Duty as a delicate and a fragile esport as of this moment. You try to shake it up too much, you try to throw the wrench into the setup. We saw what happened whenever we started switching things to best of 7 single LM back in Black Ops 3. It shook up the scene a little bit too much, right? It is fragile. You have to be careful. You have to sit it down lightly. You can't shake it up too much or you'll break it. And so, like I said, if Call of Duty can hold on to the Optic Gaming name in any way possible, that would save them. That would help. That would provide some stability to the first year, to the inaugural year, where a lot of people are worried about the first title that's coming out because it hasn't been super prepared. It hasn't been tailored to franchising, right? I'm sure at this moment, Infinity Ward is thinking, hey, like, we're going to be the first multiplayer title. We were just told that franchising is happening, like 4 months ago, 5-6 months ago at this point. So they haven't had a whole lot of time to tailor their game. Players, organizations, the game isn't prepared. Any stability is going to help. So what is possibly, though, going to mess up things for Immortals and possibly for Activision Blizzard in terms of the Optic Gaming name, right? What really could cause for themselves to implode on their Call of Duty hype if you are Immortals, if you want to try to keep that Optic Gaming name, right? And the main problem that they are dealing with in terms of the fan base, in terms of the reaction to them releasing teams and whatnot, it's the sell of Optic. It's the sell of it leaving Hex's hands and going over now toward another fan base, rather toward another organization of which the fans clearly know that it's no longer in the hands of which they previously know, right? You have a massive fan base. You have a massive following of Hex and everybody who's been involved with the Optic Gaming name over the last few years. It is the biggest brand in esports in terms of a fan base, right? Without question. So if you are looking to try and mend that over, how are you going to do it if you're not allowing them to have any safety, any presence, right? And so when we saw this announcement come forward in terms of releasing the Gears of War team, which I know is somewhat off subject, but it is related to Optic Gaming, and it is one of the most dominant, if not the most dominant console esports team of all time, coming from a Call of Duty background. It pains me to say it, but it's true. 17 out of 19 championships, events that they've attended, they won. It's unbelievable. I think at the two that they lost, they placed 4th and 2nd. Big deal, right? It's not as if they got shut out. It's unbelievable that they were able to accomplish that. And as soon as the Gears of War team was released, tweets from Optic members like Crim6 and Hex especially saying, this isn't us. I mean, Hex literally tweeted out as soon as that announcement came out, he made it clear that wasn't us that did that. That wasn't us who did that. That is no longer our Optic Gaming. That is now the corporate Optic who is taking over. And like I said, when Immortals purchase was finalized, I made it clear personally. I mean, I was personally tweeting this out. This will probably work out very similar to how Infinite did, and like I was talking about, previously, and how everyone kind of knows how the Infinite situation worked out, was that it was handed over to Infinite Esports, who became the parent company. To Optic Gaming. They made a lot of wrong decisions, in terms of the New York Rangers ownership. Um, Things were not going well. That's for sure. Things were kind of going astray to a certain extent, and they weren't able to lock things down. People were in the wrong positions. They were making wrong decisions, and that's been very bled out. There's been a ton of different podcasts that are now covering this story, and even Hex's own podcast where he's gone into depth about Optic J and all of those things that have kind of occurred. But this was my worry when the sell was done from Infinite Esports now to Immortals. Is it really going to be that much different? Is he now going to have, in terms of Hex, in terms of the kind of the OGs essentially of Optic Gaming, are they going to have some control now? And I didn't really think so. And that was my worry. Whenever this announcement came through, everyone was like, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Is Hex going to have a chance to kind of do what he wants? And I thought personally, probably not, right? This is a better infrastructure. This is Immortals Gaming Club, who have a ton of major backers, probably one of the most, kind of solid infrastructures in esports today, which means this company already possesses positions that are already in play. They're not really as willing to move locked in pieces around for people who are just coming into their own system. Why would they want to make do when they feel like they had the best in the world, when they feel like they had the money to do whatever they want to? So I'll be honest, though. I feel like throughout this entire situation, it has been unfortunate for Optic, right? This whole situation has not panned out the way that anyone had ever intended. And my personal history, I used to watch Optic Gaming all the time, coming from a Call of Duty esports background. You watch them in Black Ops 1, you watch them in Black Ops 2, their come up, their story in terms of being a team that wasn't the best, but had the most, storied, or rather they kind of had the whole story around them. They were the first ones to stream. They were the first one, or as a team, they were the first ones to kind of get that major fan base behind them and get that social media backing behind them. And Hector has kind of said this over time, and I think this is honestly incredible when you really think about it. Optic isn't really an esports team. Like, they are one, but that isn't their main focus. Their main focus is to be social media. That their main focus is to kind of be a brand that also is an esports, but isn't an esports brand. And that's what separates them from a lot of other ones out there. And obviously they're compared a lot to FaZe Clan for good reason, right? Banks goes out recently and says, hey, they want to be a lifestyle brand. They're not really that interested in terms of wanting to be an esports team anymore. They're focused on the long game. They're focused on the lifestyle stuff that's going to make them more money in turn. They're not super interested in just wanting to be an esports team. So, like I said, I just think this overall situation for Optic is so unfortunate. I think, I forget who exactly said it, but this literally is the worst situation that they could find themselves in. It really is. And you know what? It came down to just wrong decision-making. It came down to just unfortunate moments. But I think that, the way that this is all going down right now, it could benefit Immortals in a pretty big way. But I'm going to bring up one last thing before we close things out today, because I see one avenue. This is going back to like Avengers Endgame, like 1 out of 14 billion scenarios. The one way that I see that OG, in terms of Hex, can get the Optic Gaming brand back would be if Immortals has no previous ties to Optic after franchise it begins in Call of Duty. They may be willing to sell the name. Now, I say that, right, because I mentioned this earlier. Immortals, if they don't have Optic, right, they're not using the name. It's not really becoming as much use to them, especially if the Call of Duty team is known as something else next year. What's the benefit? What are you going to use the team for? What really is the benefit of having this name that no longer means a whole lot? Maybe you would be willing to sell it. Maybe you would be willing to try and throw something out there. And that's my big thing, right? For OG as of this moment, that's the one thing that they could accomplish. That's the one thing that they may be able to get their hands on, is if this situation from Immortals, which I think could be a really good opportunity for them, if they can use the Optic Gaming name when it comes down to the CDL, perfect situation for them. I mean, literally for them only. I'm not talking about the Hex side of things. I'm not talking about the original Optic Gaming kind of unit, that original squad. That'd be a perfect situation for Immortals. Not at all on the other side. But if Immortals can't use that, big moment for Hex. Big moment for them, because that might be their opportunity to buy the name of Optic Gaming and then maybe move forward. However, I just don't see how quick of a turnaround that could be, that could allow for Hex and other partners to get in the league this season. Because if the sale goes through, let's say best case scenario, Hector manages to get Optic back. Let's say Immortals is no longer interested in the name, it's no longer benefiting them, right? They can sell it off, and that's the most money they're going to get out of it in the end. Okay, well, there goes to Hex. But when it happens, is he really going to have time to utilize that name? Can he even get it in the CDL next season? I'd imagine if Immortals can't get it, then Optic is no longer going to be in Call of Duty for the rest of time, because Immortals will most likely try it. If it doesn't work, then Hex obviously can't. But at least he would have possession of the name Optic Gaming again. At least they can move forward, maybe possess into other esports, maybe try to dive into Texas, which of course has been their mainstay. It obviously hasn't been, or rather hasn't treated them the most kindly in terms of the Texas Rangers. But you never know, right? It definitely could happen. So those are kind of my thoughts as of this moment. I personally think, to kind of answer my own question in this instance, I think that Immortals will attempt to use the name Optic in the CDL. And I am very interested in that subject. And I know a lot of people aren't kind of bringing that up right now. I know a lot of people are kind of thinking, it's with legal and all these things, it could happen because Activision Blizzard knows how valuable that name is. However, if it does not work, there could also be the opportunity where Immortals wants to sell the name, and who's going to be the first man up for bids? The guy who created it himself, Mr. Hex, is going to be interested in it. So those are kind of my thoughts in terms of that. Like I said, kind of going back to the things that we were discussing earlier, I think that franchising is very important. I think that franchising has a very big opportunity for Call of Duty esports, and obviously everything kind of coming into a roundup here. I think that it is a good opportunity, but much like Banks said, kind of coming around circle here, much like Banks said, the consistency of the esport is very important, right? How long is a game going to be on top for? Does all this actually matter in the long scheme of things? I think it does. And I think that Call of Duty is a name much like the Fortnites of the world, much like the Minecrafts, much like the World of Warcrafts, all of those things that are out there, even League of Legends, that last longer than a lot of others do, right? There's so many games that have been out there that no longer anyone plays. So there's no one who kind of plays those things anymore. And the one benefit of Call of Duty is that there is a new title each and every year, meaning that there is always some bit of excitement that's coming with the title following it, right? I know in terms of Overwatch, people are kind of worried about, is Overwatch 2 going to come out eventually? Is the game getting too stale? Well, with Call of Duty, you have a new title every year. There's always something to look forward to. There's always something that is kind of catapulting it. And that's the reason why titles like Halo and Gears of War, unfortunately, have seen a little bit of a digress from their previous history, is because of switching from title to title, holding on to 2, 3, 4 years of one specific game. If it's not good enough, then you're holding on to it for 3 years. If you're in Call of Duty, at the least, right, a somewhat of a benefit, which it also has negatives, is that, hey, if a game is terrible, you only have it for 9 months. We have it for a year. We have the next one to look forward to. So that's kind of my thoughts on the CDL. Like, I am worried. I definitely do have my excitement for it, but I also do have my worries because we haven't really seen, in terms of the new age, a franchise esport go down in flames. We haven't seen a franchise esport fail. So those are my kind of curiosities with it. But feel free to let us know in terms of on Twitter, guys, in case you did miss this, or if you kind of came in at the last second, feel free to check out our YouTube channel, Prediction Esports, to kind of stay up to date. Like, so you can catch all those videos live on demand. But it was a pleasure talking with you guys today here on the Reload episode 2. It's a pleasure to be a part of Prediction. I know last week I got to kind of head up the very first segment, the very first show here, and it was a ton of fun. I really look forward to the future. But if you guys get a chance to tomorrow, if you like some Smash, which I'm kind of into it myself, I know I'm gonna be watch along with me. Hard Reads episode 2 is going on tomorrow with TK Breezy and Austin. Awesome dudes. It's going on tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern time. That's 3 p.m. Pacific, right here on your go-to network for esports analysis content. But like I said, guys, thank you so much for tuning into the Reload, and I will see you all next time.